I thought I knew my family, every quirk, every smile, every unspoken rule. I'm Nora Caldwell, 34, a graphic designer in Seattle, scraping by, chasing dreams. Our monthly family dinners were my safe haven, a place where love felt certain, even if tension simmered beneath. But one autumn evening, as plates clinked and wine glowed under the chandelier, a single question from my grandmother shattered it all. It wasn't just words, it was a detonation, exposing lies that had festered for years. My world tilted, and the people I trusted most became strangers. Stick with me, this story changes everything. Grandma Evelyn was my compass, my light in the fog. At 80, she carried herself with the grace of someone who'd built an empire, not just inherited it. Her Seattle mansion, with its sprawling gardens and timeless elegance, felt like a sanctuary, a world apart from my parents' modest home. Evelyn saw the artist in me when no one else did, gifting me my first camera at 13, whispering, "Your vision matters, Nora." While my parents pushed for practical careers, business, law, Evelyn urged me to chase my passion. But there was always a shadow. My parents, Sylvia and Leonard, acted strange around her. Mom's smiles were tight, never reaching her eyes. Dad shrank into silence, as if her presence dimmed him. I brushed it off as a kid, thinking that's just how families work. Yet, looking back, I see the cracks, Mom's clipped words, Dad's averted gaze. They hid something big. When my business hit rock bottom, I turned to Evelyn, not them. Her strength felt like home, but I didn't know how deep their resentment ran, or how it would unravel everything. At 8, I sat with Evelyn, sketching under her patient gaze. "Draw your truth, Nora," she said, her voice warm, steady, like the Seattle rain. Those moments shaped me, gave me courage to pursue graphic design, even when my parents scoffed. But there were signs I missed. At 16, at a family picnic, Mom's voice cut through the laughter, "Evelyn's money doesn't make her better than us." Her words stung, sharp and raw, revealing a bitterness I couldn't grasp. I buried it, convinced families just had quirks. Growing up, I saw more, Mom's forced cheer at Evelyn's visits, Dad's quiet submission. They lived comfortably, but never like Evelyn's wealth. Yet, something felt off, like a melody played out of tune. When the economy crashed, my business crumbled. My biggest client vanished, leaving me counting pennies, skipping meals to make rent. I confided in Evelyn, seeking her wisdom, not her wallet. She listened, her eyes sharp with understanding. But my parents? I couldn't face their judgment. They'd always called my career risky, pushing Gideon into finance, Lila into caution. That picnic moment haunted me. Mom's resentment wasn't just words, it was a warning. I didn't know then that their envy had fueled a betrayal so deep it would shatter our family. Years of lies, hidden in plain sight, were about to surface, and I was too naive to see it coming. Grandma Evelyn Warwick was a force, a woman who carried the weight of an empire with grace. At 80, she lived in a Seattle mansion that seemed to breathe history, sprawling gardens, chandeliers that caught the light like stars, and walls lined with art from a life well lived. Her late husband, a real estate tycoon, built a legacy she guarded fiercely, not just with wealth but with wisdom. Evelyn wasn't just rich, she was a beacon, someone who saw potential where others saw limits. To me, Nora Caldwell, a 34-year-old graphic designer scraping by, she was everything. She saw the artist in me when I was just a kid, handing me my first camera at 13, her eyes bright with belief. "Your vision is your power, Nora," she'd say, her voice steady, like a lighthouse in a storm. While my parents pushed for practical paths, business, law, stability, Evelyn urged me to chase my dreams, to paint the world as I saw it. Her support wasn't just words, it was a lifeline. But there was a shadow in her light. My family, especially my parents, seemed to shrink in her presence, their smiles strained, their words clipped. I was too young to understand then, but Evelyn's wealth wasn't just a gift, it was a wedge. Her mansion, her confidence, her generosity, they stirred something bitter in my parents, something I couldn't name but felt in every tense silence. Looking back, I see it now: envy, resentment, a fracture waiting to break. Evelyn was my rock, but to them, she was a mirror they didn't want to face. My parents, Sylvia and Leonard Caldwell, both 58, lived a different life, a middle-class one, steady but unremarkable. Sylvia was a high school administrator, sharp and organized, always planning. Leonard, an insurance manager, was quiet, methodical, the kind of man who checked the locks twice before bed. Their home in a Seattle suburb was cozy, practical, nothing like Evelyn's grand estate. But around her, they changed. Sylvia's smiles were forced, tight, like she was holding back a storm. Her laughter at Evelyn's stories felt rehearsed, never reaching her eyes. Leonard, usually calm, became almost invisible, his words shrinking to nods or mumbles. As a kid, I thought this was just how adults acted, awkward around wealth, maybe intimidated by Evelyn's poise. But growing up, I saw it differently. There was a weight in their glances, a bitterness in Sylvia's clipped replies when Evelyn offered advice or gifts. "We're fine," she'd say, her voice sharp, like she was defending something fragile. Leonard would just look away, as if Evelyn's presence was a judgment. I didn't get it then, why they seemed to resent the woman who'd given us so much. But the signs were there, in Sylvia's sighs when Evelyn paid for family trips, in Leonard's silence when she spoke of her husband's success. They lived in her shadow, and it chafed them. I thought it was pride, maybe jealousy, but it was deeper, a resentment that had simmered for years, waiting for a spark to ignite. I was too busy chasing my own dreams to see the truth. Their bitterness wasn't just personal. It was a secret, one that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. My siblings were caught in the same strange dance. Gideon, 37, was a finance analyst, all sharp suits and sharper ambition. He'd built his life to stand apart, refusing Evelyn's help, as if her wealth was a challenge to his pride. "I make my own way," he'd say, his jaw tight, but I saw the strain in his eyes, the pressure to prove himself. He kept Evelyn at arm's length, skipping her lavish dinners when he could, claiming work. Lila, 29, was different, a grad student with a quiet intensity, buried in books. She followed Sylvia's lead, polite but distant with Evelyn, her smiles formal, her words careful. "Grandma's nice," she'd say, but there was a wall there, built by years of Sylvia's influence. Neither of them shared my closeness with Evelyn, and I didn't understand why. As kids, we'd all loved her stories, her gifts, the camera for me, books for Lila, a watch for Gideon. But as adults, they drifted. Gideon's visits were rare, his calls short. Lila mirrored Sylvia's stiffness, as if Evelyn's wealth was a barrier. I thought it was just personality, Gideon's independence, Lila's shyness. But there was something else, a tension I couldn't name. They weren't just distant, they were guarded, like they knew something I didn't. Looking back, I see the threads, Sylvia's whispered complaints, Leonard's quiet nods, the way Gideon and Lila avoided Evelyn's gaze. Our family was a puzzle, and I was missing pieces. Evelyn was my anchor, but for them, she was a reminder of something they couldn't escape, something that would soon tear us apart. I built a graphic design business from scratch, pouring my heart into every sketch, every pixel. It was my dream, fueled by Evelyn's belief in me, her words echoing, "Your vision is your power." But dreams don't pay rent, and when the economy crashed, my world shook. My biggest client pulled out, leaving me with a stack of bills and a dwindling bank account. I'd stay up late, crunching numbers, eating instant noodles to stretch every dollar. I was 34, fighting to keep my head above water, too proud to ask for help, except from Evelyn. She didn't offer money, she offered wisdom, listening as I poured out my fears. "You're stronger than you know," she said, her voice a lifeline. I couldn't turn to my parents. Sylvia called my career risky, her tone dripping with judgment. Leonard just nodded, avoiding my eyes. They'd always pushed for stability, Gideon in finance, Lila in a safe grad program. My art was a gamble they didn't understand. Looking back, I see the irony. While I scraped by, they were hiding something massive. Years ago, at a family picnic when I was 16, Sylvia's voice had cut through the summer air. Evelyn's money doesn't make her better than us. I was a kid, embarrassed, brushing it off as a bad day. But it wasn't. It was a glimpse into a resentment that had festered for decades. Sylvia's sighs when Evelyn paid for vacations, Leonard's silence when she spoke of her husband's empire, they weren't quirks. They were cracks in a facade, signs of a deeper grudge. I didn't see it then, too focused on my own path, my own struggles. But those moments stuck with me, like a song you can't unhear. When I confided in Evelyn about my business, I felt safe, seen. But my parents? I avoided their judgment, their lectures. I didn't know their resentment wasn't just about Evelyn's wealth, it was about what they'd done with it. They'd built a lie, one that had grown for years, funded by secrets I couldn't imagine. Every tense dinner, every dodged question, was a clue. I was too naive to connect them, too trusting to see the truth. My family wasn't just fractured, it was built on a deception that would soon explode, leaving me to question everything I thought I knew. The picnic, the silences, the bitterness, they were warnings. And I was about to learn what they'd been hiding all along. That autumn evening felt different, heavy with something I couldn't name. I pulled my beat-up Honda into my parents' driveway, the same one I'd parked in 100 times before, but something was off. There, gleaming under the streetlight, was a brand new SUV, sleek, black, the kind of car my dad, Leonard, would have called a money pit in the past. He was the guy who haggled over used cars, who clipped coupons for groceries. This wasn't him. I stepped out, my boots crunching on fresh gravel, and noticed the house itself had changed. The lawn was manicured, not a weed in sight, and new flower beds lined the path. The front door, once a faded blue, was now a bold red, framed by sleek sconces. Inside, my mom, Sylvia, greeted me with a smile too bright, showing off marble countertops and a dining room that screamed money. "We decided to treat ourselves," she said, her voice almost defiant, like she was proving a point. I nodded, but my stomach twisted. My parents had always lived modestly. Sylvia, a high school administrator, and Leonard, an insurance manager, were practical, not flashy. Where was this coming from? I thought of my own life, my graphic design business teetering on the edge, nights spent eating instant noodles to save a buck. Their sudden wealth didn't add up. I'd been so focused on my own struggles, scraping by in a cramped Seattle apartment, that I hadn't noticed their shift. But standing in their remodeled home, with its polished floors and designer furniture, I felt like I'd walked into a stranger's life. Sylvia's pride, Leonard's nervous glance out the window, they were hiding something. I didn't know what, but the air felt thick, like a storm was brewing. This wasn't just a dinner. It was the start of something that would unravel everything I thought I knew about my family. The house was buzzing, but not with warmth. It was a nervous energy, like everyone was playing a part in a play I didn't understand. My brother, Gideon, was already there, leaning against the counter with a glass of scotch in his hand. At 37, he was all sharp edges, finance analyst, always in control, but tonight he was drinking faster than usual, his eyes darting to the door. "Rough week at work," he muttered, but his voice was tight, like he was holding something back. I tried to catch his gaze, but he looked away, swirling his drink. Lila, my younger sister, was curled up on the couch, her phone glowing in her hands. At 29, she was a grad student, always buried in books, but tonight she was texting furiously, her brow furrowed. "Just school stuff," she said when I asked, but her program was on break. Her quick smile didn't fool me, it was the same polite mask she wore around Grandma Evelyn. Sylvia was a whirlwind, darting between the kitchen and dining room, adjusting napkins, checking the oven. "Everything's perfect," she said, but her hands trembled slightly, betraying her. Leonard was worse. He was practically a ghost, straightening forks and spoons with a precision that felt desperate. He barely spoke, just nodded when Sylvia called his name. I'd seen them tense before, especially around Evelyn, but this was different. It was like they were all waiting for something to go wrong. I tried to shake it off, telling myself it was just family quirks, Gideon's stress, Lila's distraction, my parents' nerves. But deep down, I knew better. There was a current running through the room, a silent agreement I wasn't part of. I thought of past dinners, the way Sylvia's laughter always sounded forced when Evelyn was there, how Leonard would shrink into himself. They'd always been like this around her, but tonight it was amplified, like they were bracing for impact. Then the doorbell rang, and the air shifted. Evelyn stepped in, her navy dress and pearls commanding the room. She was 80, but she moved like royalty, her presence filling every corner. Everyone froze for a split second, Gideon mid-sip, Lila's fingers pausing on her phone, Sylvia clutching a wine bottle. "Good evening," Evelyn said, her voice calm but piercing. I smiled, relieved to see her, my anchor. But the others? They looked like they'd been caught. I didn't know why, but the weight of their glances told me this night was about to change everything. The dining table was a work of art, prime rib glistening, truffle mashed potatoes steaming, wine glasses catching the light of a new chandelier. It was the kind of spread you'd see in a magazine, not in my parents' house. Sylvia beamed as she served, but her eyes kept flicking to Evelyn, who sat at the head like she owned the room. I tried to focus on the food, the warmth of being together, but the tension was suffocating. Evelyn, as always, cut through it. "This is quite the feast, Sylvia," she said, her tone even but sharp, like she was testing the air. "How did you afford the remodel?" "The SUV?" Sylvia's smile faltered, just for a moment. "Oh, just a few new pieces," she said, her voice too high, too quick. Leonard coughed, mumbling, "Got a great deal." I frowned, the math not adding up. They'd always been frugal, saving for years to replace a couch, let alone a car. Evelyn's questions kept coming, each one precise, like a surgeon's scalpel. "The landscaping must have cost a fortune," she said, sipping her wine. Sylvia laughed, a nervous edge to it. "We saved up," she said, but her hands gripped the tablecloth. Leonard stared at his plate, silent. I looked at Gideon, hoping for a clue, but he was draining his glass, his jaw tight. Lila kept her eyes on her phone, pretending not to hear. I wanted to ask, to push, but something held me back, the way Sylvia's voice cracked, the way Leonard avoided Evelyn's gaze. They were hiding something, and Evelyn knew it. Her questions weren't just curiosity, they were a challenge, a way to peel back the lies. I thought of my own life, the late nights worrying about rent, the clients I'd lost. I'd confided in Evelyn, not them, because their judgment stung too much. Now, sitting at this lavish table, I felt like an outsider in my own family. The food was perfect, the wine expensive, but it tasted like betrayal. Evelyn's eyes met mine, steady, knowing. She was about to say something that would break the silence, and our family, wide open. I couldn't shake the feeling that I was missing something big. As Sylvia poured more wine, I caught her whispering to Leonard, her voice low, urgent, "Keep it together until she leaves." My heart sank. Keep what together? I looked around, searching for answers. Gideon was on his third scotch, his knuckles white around the glass. Lila's texting had stopped, but she clutched her phone like a lifeline, her eyes darting to Sylvia. The room felt like a pressure cooker, and I was the only one not in on the secret. I thought of my own life, the nights I'd spent eating ramen in my tiny apartment, checking my bank account with dread. My graphic design business was crumbling, and I'd been too proud to ask for help, except from Evelyn. She'd listened, her advice a balm to my fears, but I'd never mentioned money. My parents, though? They'd always called my career a risk, a mistake. Sylvia's lectures about real jobs echoed in my head, Leonard's silent nods backing her up. Now, seeing their new SUV, their remodeled kitchen, I felt a knot in my chest. Where was this money coming from? They'd lived paycheck to paycheck my whole life, saving pennies, not splurging on chandeliers. I replayed moments, Sylvia's bitterness at Evelyn's generosity, Leonard's discomfort when she offered to pay for things. At a family picnic years ago, Sylvia had snapped, "Evelyn's money doesn't make her better than us." I'd brushed it off, but now it felt like a clue. Their whispers, their nervous glances, they weren't just anxious. They were guilty. I wanted to confront them, to demand answers, but Evelyn's presence held me back. She sat there, calm, watching, like she already knew the truth. The dinner was a facade, a performance to hide something darker. I didn't know what, but the weight of it pressed down on me, making every bite taste like ash. Whatever they were hiding, it was about to come out, and I wasn't ready for what it would do to us. The dinner was winding down, the clink of forks fading, the air heavy with unspoken tension. We'd eaten prime rib, sipped expensive wine, but the opulence felt like a mask. My parents, Sylvia and Leonard, were on edge, their smiles brittle. Gideon, my brother, nursed his scotch, his eyes avoiding mine. Lila, my sister, stared at her plate, her phone forgotten. Grandma Evelyn sat at the head of the table, her presence commanding, her gaze sharp. I was trying to enjoy the tiramisu, to hold on to the warmth of family, but something was wrong. The room felt like it was holding its breath. Then Evelyn turned to me, her voice calm but piercing, like a blade through silk. "Nora," she said, "is the $2,000 I send you monthly enough?" The words hung in the air, simple but devastating. My spoon froze midair. My heart stopped. What money? I blinked, my mind racing, searching for some explanation, but there was none. I'd never seen a dime from her, not like that. The table went silent, every eye on me, Sylvia's wide with panic, Leonard's fixed on the floor, Gideon's narrowed, Lila's confused. What money? I managed, my voice barely a whisper. Evelyn's expression didn't waver, but her eyes locked on Sylvia, cold and unyielding. The room felt like it was closing in, the chandelier's light too harsh, the air too thick. I looked at my parents, waiting for them to laugh it off, to say it was a mistake. But Sylvia's face drained of color, her lips trembling. Leonard gripped his napkin like it was a lifeline. Gideon let out a low whistle, breaking the silence, but it wasn't amusement, it was disbelief. Lila's fork clattered against her plate. I felt like I'd been punched, my chest tight with a mix of confusion and dread. Evelyn's question wasn't just a question, it was a bomb, and it had just gone off. I didn't know it yet, but this moment would shatter everything I thought I knew about my family, exposing a betrayal so deep it would change us forever. What had my parents done? And why was everyone looking at them like they'd been caught? Evelyn's voice cut through the silence, steady and unrelenting, like a judge delivering a verdict. For 5 years, I've sent $2,000 every month, $120,000, to an account Sylvia told me was yours, Nora, for a chronic illness you don't have. My stomach dropped, the words sinking in like stones. $120,000? For me? I'd been eating ramen, skipping bills, fighting to keep my graphic design business afloat, and there was no illness, no account, no money. My eyes snapped to Sylvia, my mom, who was pale, her hands shaking as she clutched her wine glass. "It's not what you think," she stammered, her voice high, desperate. We needed it for the family." Needed it? For what? The new SUV? The marble countertops? The chandelier glittering above us? I looked at Leonard, my dad, hoping for an explanation, but he just stared at the table, his face a mask of shame. Explain, Evelyn said, her tone icy, unyielding. Sylvia's laugh was shrill, almost manic, as she tried to deflect. It was for all of us, Evelyn. You don't understand what it's like, living in your shadow, always second best. Her words stung, but they didn't justify this. They'd lied, taken money meant for me, for a fake illness, while I struggled to pay rent. I thought of the late nights, the eviction notices I'd dodged, the clients I'd lost. I'd confided in Evelyn about my business, my fears, but never asked for a dime. And all this time, my parents were pocketing thousands, living a life I couldn't afford. Gideon's glass hit the table hard, his voice low. You stole from Nora? His words were sharp, cutting through Sylvia's excuses. Lila's eyes were wide, her voice barely audible. Mom, how could you? I couldn't speak, my throat tight with betrayal. Sylvia's eyes darted between us, searching for an out, but there was none. Leonard finally spoke, his voice a whisper. We thought we could manage it. Manage it? They'd managed to build a lie, to betray their own daughter for years. Evelyn didn't flinch, her gaze pinning them like a spotlight. There's more, she said, her voice heavy with warning. I didn't think my heart could sink further, but I was wrong. The money, the lies, it wasn't just about me. This was bigger, uglier, a betrayal that had infected our entire family. I sat there, frozen, as the truth began to unravel, each word pulling apart the life I thought I knew. My parents weren't just flawed, they were thieves, and I was their mark. Evelyn's words hung in the air, a promise of more pain to come. My mind was reeling from the $120,000 bombshell, but her next revelation cut deeper. When Nora told me her business was failing, Evelyn said, her voice steady but laced with sorrow, I increased the payments to $5,000 a month, thinking it would help her rebuild. $60,000 more, gone. My breath caught, a wave of nausea hitting me. I'd been working late nights, cutting corners, skipping meals to keep my business alive, while my parents pocketed money meant to save me. Sylvia's face crumpled, her voice breaking. We deserved some comfort, Evelyn. You've always had everything. Her words were a desperate defense, but they felt like a slap. Comfort? While I was eating instant noodles, dodging eviction? Leonard's head hung lower, his silence louder than any confession. We thought we'd pay it back, he mumbled, but it was hollow, a lie to himself as much as to us. I thought of the moments I'd confided in Evelyn, pouring out my fears about losing my business, my dreams. I'd never asked for money, only her wisdom, her strength. And they'd taken that, too, turning my vulnerability into their gain. Gideon's face was stone, his voice cold. You used her struggles to justify this? Lila's eyes filled with tears, her voice shaking. You knew how hard she was trying. The room felt like it was spinning, the lavish dinner a cruel mockery. Sylvia's excuses kept coming, each one weaker. We were under pressure, living in your shadow, Evelyn. We just wanted a piece of that life. But it wasn't their life to take. It was mine, meant to keep me afloat, to give me a chance. I felt hollow, betrayed not just by the money but by the trust I'd placed in them. Every family dinner, every hug, every "we're proud of you" felt like a lie. They'd watched me struggle, knowing they were stealing my safety net. Evelyn's gaze softened as she looked at me, but her voice stayed firm. There's still more you need to know, she said, and my heart sank further. The betrayal wasn't just about me, it was bigger, a wound that would tear through all of us, leaving no one untouched. Gideon's voice broke the tense silence, sharp and bitter. So Nora was your favorite to steal from? His words hit like a punch, turning the betrayal into something personal, a fracture between us siblings. I stared at him, my heart pounding, wanting to scream that I didn't know, that I was as blindsided as he was. But the pain in his eyes stopped me. He wasn't just angry at them, he was hurt, too. Lila's voice was softer, almost a whisper. How could you do this to her? Her question wasn't just for Sylvia and Leonard, it was for the family we thought we were. I saw flashes of my life, late nights hunched over my laptop, worrying about rent, thinking my parents were in my corner. Instead, they'd been siphoning off my future, $180,000 in total, while I scraped by. Sylvia's laugh turned into a sob, her hands covering her face. We didn't mean to hurt you, she choked out, but it was too late. The words felt empty, a flimsy shield against the truth. Leonard's shoulders slumped, his voice barely audible. We thought we could fix it. Fix it? They'd built a life on lies, on money meant for me, while I fought to survive. I couldn't breathe, the weight of their betrayal crushing me. Every memory of their support, every "we're here for you," felt tainted, like a script they'd rehearsed. Gideon slammed his glass down, the sound echoing like a gunshot. You didn't just betray Nora, you betrayed all of us. Lila's tears spilled over, her voice breaking. I trusted you. I wanted to speak, to yell, to cry, but my throat was tight, my mind a blur. The family I loved, the people I trusted, were strangers now. Evelyn sat still, her eyes on me, full of sorrow but also strength. This isn't the end, she said, her voice a quiet promise. But I couldn't hear it. The table, the dinner, the family, it was all crumbling. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, and walked out, their voices fading behind me. The truth was out, and it had broken us. The air in the dining room was suffocating, the weight of Evelyn's first revelation, $180,000 stolen from me, still crushing my chest. But she wasn't done. Her voice, steady and unyielding, cut through the silence like a blade. There's more, she said, her eyes moving from me to Gideon and Lila. The education trust funds I set up for all three of you, $400,000 in total, have been drained. My heart sank further, a hollow ache spreading through me. $400,000? Meant for our futures, our dreams, gone. Sylvia, my mom, gasped, her hand flying to her mouth, but it wasn't shock, it was fear of being exposed. Leonard, my dad, slumped in his chair, his face gray, as if the truth was draining the life out of him. Evelyn's words were relentless. Those funds were for Nora's art school, Gideon's business degree, Lila's graduate studies. They were your safety nets, your chance to build lives you chose. I thought of my years at art school, scraping by on scholarships and part-time jobs, thinking the trust had run dry. I'd believed my parents when they said, money's tight for everyone, Nora. But they'd lied. They'd taken it all, for what? A new SUV? A remodeled kitchen? A chandelier that mocked us now? Sylvia's voice broke, desperate. We needed it, Evelyn. You don't know what it's like, always being less, always compared to you. Her words were a weak defense, a plea that fell flat. Gideon's face was stone, his voice low. You stole our futures? Lila's eyes glistened, her voice trembling. All of us? I couldn't speak, my mind flashing to every sacrifice I'd made, every late night working, every dollar I'd stretched. They'd watched us struggle, knowing they'd taken our chances. Evelyn's gaze was unwavering, her sorrow palpable. They used it for a lifestyle they couldn't afford, she said, while you three fought for your dreams. Sylvia sobbed, her excuses crumbling. We thought we could replace it, she said, but it was a lie, and we all knew it. Leonard's silence was louder than her words, his shame a confession. The trust funds were gone, our futures pawned for their fleeting comfort. I felt betrayed not just as a daughter, but as a sister. Gideon and Lila had been robbed, too. The family I thought I knew was unraveling, thread by thread, and the truth was uglier than I'd ever imagined. There was more to come, and I wasn't sure I could bear it. The weight of the stolen trust funds was still sinking in, but Evelyn's next words hit like a second blow. Nora, she said, her voice heavy with regret, your student loans, Those were paid off 3 years ago by the trust. But you kept sending payments. My breath caught, a sharp pain twisting in my chest. I'd been sending $500 a month, $18,000 total, to what I thought was a loan company. Every payment was a sacrifice, skipping dinners, avoiding outings, working 2 jobs in college to keep up. I thought I was being responsible, paying off my debt, building a future. But it was a lie. Those payments went straight to my parents' account. Sylvia's face crumpled, tears streaming down her cheeks. "We didn't mean to hurt you," she whispered, but her words felt like salt in a wound. Leonard's head hung low, his voice barely audible. "We needed it to get by." Get by? While I ate instant noodles, while I stayed up late worrying about eviction? I remembered the calls from Sylvia, her voice gentle, encouraging me to keep up with the payments. She'd known. They both had. Every check I sent was a betrayal, a theft disguised as duty. I thought of my college years, juggling waitressing and internships, exhausted but proud. I'd believed I was overcoming debt, proving myself. But they'd turned my effort into their gain, funding their new car, their remodeled home. Gideon's eyes burned with anger. "You let her struggle for nothing?" Lila's voice was softer, broken. "How could you lie like that?" I wanted to scream, to demand why they'd done this, but my throat was tight, my heart shattered. Sylvia's sobs grew louder, her excuses incoherent. We were desperate, living in Evelyn's shadow. But desperation didn't justify this. They'd watched me fight, knowing they were stealing my peace. Evelyn's voice cut through, calm but firm. "There's still more," she said, and I braced myself, knowing the wounds would only deepen. The trust I'd placed in my parents was gone, replaced by a pain that felt like it would never heal. Evelyn's revelations kept coming, each one a new cut. "Gideon, Lila," she said, her voice steady but laced with sorrow, "your trust funds were misused, too." Gideon's jaw clenched, his hands balling into fists. Lila's eyes widened, her breath catching. Evelyn explained, her words precise, like a surgeon exposing a wound. "Gideon's fund was drained for a timeshare in Florida, a luxury your parents never used." Lila's went to a fabricated story about a car accident that never happened. My siblings' faces mirrored my own shock, their trust in our parents crumbling in real time. Gideon's voice was low, dangerous. "A timeshare? You took my future for a vacation home?" Lila's was barely a whisper, her tears spilling over. "A fake accident? You made that up?" I saw the pain in their eyes, the same betrayal I felt, now shared among us. Sylvia's voice cracked, pleading. We needed stability, something to show for our lives. But her words were hollow, a flimsy excuse for stealing our futures. Leonard muttered, "We thought we'd make it right," but his shame was louder than his words. I thought of Gideon, pushed into finance to prove himself, his dreams of starting his own business buried under pressure. Lila, always cautious, had nearly quit grad school, stressed by the weight of expectations. They'd suffered, too, their paths shaped by our parents' lies. I remembered a moment years ago, Gideon confiding in me about the pressure to succeed, Lila admitting she felt trapped. I hadn't seen it then, but our parents' manipulation ran deeper than money. It was control, envy, a need to outshine Evelyn's legacy. The fake accident story hit hardest. Sylvia had sent Evelyn a forged hospital bill, claiming Lila needed surgery. Lila's voice trembled. "You used me to lie to Grandma?" The betrayal wasn't just financial, it was personal, a violation of who we were. We'd all been robbed, not just of money, but of trust, of the family we thought we had. Evelyn's eyes softened, but her voice stayed firm. "You deserved better," she said, and I felt the weight of her words. The dining room, once warm, felt like a battlefield, our family fractured beyond repair. The truth was too much, a tidal wave that drowned every illusion I'd held about my family. Gideon's anger, Lila's tears, my own shock, they swirled together, a storm of betrayal. Sylvia's sobs filled the room, her excuses falling apart. "We didn't want to hurt you," she said, "but it was a lie, and we all knew it. They'd chosen their comfort over our futures, their envy over our trust." Leonard's voice was barely audible. "We thought we could fix it. But there was no fixing this. The $400,000, the $18,000 in fake loan payments, the lies about Lila's accident, they were a web of deceit, and we were caught in it." Gideon's voice cut through, raw and bitter. "You pushed me into finance to make money you spent." His words hit me hard, tying his career, his sacrifices, to their greed. Lila's quiet sob echoed his pain. "I almost quit school because of you. I couldn't look at them anymore." Every memory, family dinners, their proud smiles, felt tainted, like a photograph torn in half. I'd trusted them, believed they were in my corner, but they'd been stealing from me, from us, for years. The weight of it was crushing, a grief I couldn't name. Evelyn's voice broke the silence, calm but resolute. "This isn't the end, Nora." But I couldn't hear her hope. I stood, my chair scraping the floor, the sound sharp in the quiet. "I can't do this," I said, my voice trembling but firm. I walked out, their voices fading, Sylvia's pleas, Leonard's silence, Gideon's anger, Lila's tears. The dining room, the house, the family, it was all a lie. I needed air, space, anything to escape the truth that had shattered us. As I stepped into the cold night, I knew nothing would be the same. The betrayal wasn't just theirs, it was ours, a family broken by secrets we couldn't unlearn. The dining room felt like a graveyard of trust, the echoes of Evelyn's revelations still ringing in my ears. My parents, Sylvia and Leonard, had stolen $400,000 from our trust funds, $180,000 meant for me, and used Lila's name to fake a car accident. Their lies had unraveled, and with them, the family I thought I knew. I walked out that night, the cold Seattle air hitting my face like a slap, their voices, Sylvia's sobs, Leonard's weak excuses, fading behind me. I couldn't look at them, couldn't bear the weight of their betrayal. My phone buzzed with their texts, pleas to talk, to explain, but I ignored them. I needed space, silence, anything to dull the ache in my chest. Sylvia and Leonard's world was collapsing, and they'd built it on sand. The SUV, the remodeled kitchen, the chandelier, they were gone. Foreclosure signs went up on their house, the bank repossessed their car, their credit cards maxed out. Sylvia sent messages, her words desperate, "We didn't mean to hurt you, Nora." But they had. Leonard's calls went unanswered, his voicemails heavy with shame, "We messed up, kid." I didn't want their apologies, I wanted the years they'd stolen, the trust they'd shattered. Every memory of their support, every hug, everywhere proud, felt like a lie. I thought of the nights I'd stayed up, worrying about rent, while they spent money meant for my future. Gideon and Lila were reeling, too, their own dreams pawned for our parents' fleeting comfort. The family dinners, the laughter, the moments I'd cherished, they were tainted now, a facade hiding their greed. I cut contact, my heart too raw to face them. The house of cards they'd built had fallen, and I was left in the rubble, trying to understand how the people I loved could betray us so deeply. Evelyn's voice lingered in my mind, promising this wasn't the end, but I couldn't see a way forward. Not yet. The betrayal was a wound, and I was still bleeding. In the weeks that followed, I felt like I was drowning, but Evelyn threw me a lifeline. She called me to her Seattle mansion, her voice calm but resolute. "No more intermediaries," she said. "I'm setting up direct support for you, Nora, and your siblings." She opened new accounts, transparent and untouchable, ensuring the money went straight to us. For the first time in months, I exhaled. With her help, I moved out of my cramped apartment, where I'd counted pennies and skipped meals. My new place was small but bright, a space to breathe, to rebuild. My graphic design business, Nora Caldwell Design, had been teetering, but Evelyn's support gave it new life. I hired 2 staff members, young artists like me, their energy sparking ideas I'd lost in the grind. I landed a major client, a local tech firm needing branding, and the contract felt like a victory, proof I could stand on my own. I thought of the nights I'd spent eating instant noodles, the eviction notices I'd dodged, the clients I'd lost. That Nora was fading, replaced by someone stronger, someone who refused to let betrayal define her. Evelyn's wisdom echoed, "Your vision is your power." I poured that into my work, sketching late into the night, building a portfolio that felt like mine again. My parents' betrayal had shaken me, but it also lit a fire. I wasn't just rebuilding my business, I was rebuilding myself. Sylvia and Leonard were ghosts now, their calls unanswered, their texts unread. I didn't hate them, I couldn't, but I needed distance to heal. Evelyn became my anchor, her support more than financial. She reminded me of who I was, not what they'd taken. Each step forward, new clients, new sketches, a new home, felt like reclaiming a piece of me. The pain was still there, raw and heavy, but it was no longer all I was. I was building a new foundation, one they couldn't touch, and for the first time, I felt the ground steady beneath my feet. Gideon and Lila were finding their own paths through the wreckage. Gideon, at 37, had always been the driven one, pushed into finance by our parents' expectations. But their betrayal broke something in him, not just trust, but the weight he'd carried to prove himself. "I'm done living their script," he told me one night, his voice firm. He quit his high-pressure finance job and started a consulting firm, small but his own, focused on helping startups grow. I saw a new light in him, a freedom he hadn't had before. He wasn't just working, he was building something true to himself. Lila, 29, had been the quiet one, buried in her grad school books, but the revelation about the fake car accident shook her. She'd nearly dropped out, crushed by the pressure Sylvia piled on her to succeed. Now, with Evelyn's support, she was thriving, her research in environmental science earning praise from her professors. "I'm not doing this for them anymore," she said, her voice stronger than I'd ever heard. We started meeting weekly, just the 3 of us, at a small cafe in Seattle. No parents, no lies, just us, rebuilding what we'd lost. We talked about our dreams, our fears, the years we'd spent under Sylvia and Leonard's shadow. Gideon shared how he'd hated finance, how it felt like a cage. Lila admitted she'd felt trapped, always trying to please Mom. Those conversations, raw and honest, wove a new bond between us. Evelyn's transparent trusts gave us security, but it was our shared pain that brought us closer. We weren't just siblings, we were survivors, piecing together a family without the weight of betrayal. I thought of the old days, when we'd laugh at family dinners, unaware of the secrets beneath. Those moments were gone, but we were creating new ones, stronger, truer. Evelyn joined us sometimes, her presence a reminder that family could mean more than blood, it could mean trust, rebuilt on our terms. The betrayal left scars, deep and jagged, but I was learning to live with them. I started therapy, a small room in Seattle where I could unravel the pain. Their lies made me doubt my worth, I told my therapist, my voice shaking. She listened as I poured out the memories, Sylvia's lectures about real jobs, Leonard's silent nods, the years I'd fought to prove myself while they stole my future. Therapy wasn't a cure, but it was a mirror, showing me I was more than their betrayal. I began to see the strength I'd built, the resilience that kept me going. Lila was finding her own way, too. One night, she called me, her voice steady but fierce. "I confronted Mom," she said. I told her, "You almost stole my future." She cried, but I needed to say it. That moment was a turning point for Lila, a reclaiming of her voice. She was no longer the quiet sister, molded by Sylvia's expectations. She was free, her grad school work a testament to her strength. Gideon, too, was healing, his consulting firm a symbol of his independence. We were all finding ways to move forward, not by forgetting, but by rebuilding. Evelyn's support was our backbone, her transparent trusts a promise of security. But it was our own courage that carried us. I landed another client, a nonprofit needing murals, and as I sketched, I felt Evelyn's words, "Your vision is your power." I was healing, not just from their lies, but from the doubt they'd planted in me. Sylvia and Leonard were still there, their texts occasional, their apologies small steps. I didn't respond, not yet, but I didn't hate them. The wound was too fresh, but I was learning to let go of the anger, to focus on the life I was building. My siblings and I were enough. Our new family, forged in truth, was stronger than the one we'd lost. I wasn't whole yet, but I was getting there, one step, one sketch, one honest moment at a time. 2 years have passed since that dinner, since the truth about my parents' betrayal tore our family apart. Sylvia and Leonard's lies, $400,000 stolen from our trust funds, $180,000 meant for me, a fake accident in Lila's name, left wounds that still ache. But time has a way of shifting the ground beneath you. My life looks different now. My graphic design business, Nora Caldwell Design, is thriving. I've landed contracts with tech firms and nonprofits, my sketches filling walls across Seattle. The cramped apartment, the nights of instant noodles, are memories now, replaced by a space that feels like home, filled with light and possibility. Sylvia and Leonard are trying to make amends, but it's slow, fragile. A text from Sylvia came last week, "Good luck with your presentation." It was small, but it was something, a crack in the wall between us. I don't reply often, the hurt is still there, a quiet scar. Leonard's voicemails carry regret, "We're so sorry, Nora." I listen, but I'm not ready to forgive, not fully. Trust isn't rebuilt overnight. They've lost their house, their car, their pride, living in a modest apartment now, scraping by like I once did. I don't wish them pain, but I needed distance to heal. Grandma Evelyn's support has been my anchor, her transparent trusts, her belief in me. I see her strength in my work, in every line I draw. My siblings, Gideon and Lila, are finding their way, too, carving paths free from our parents' shadow. We're not whole yet, but we're moving forward, step by cautious step. The betrayal broke us, but it also forced us to rebuild stronger. I'm learning to carry the pain without letting it define me. My parents' choices were theirs, not mine. Each new client, each sketch, feels like a reclaiming of my future, a reminder that I am more than what they took. Family isn't what it used to be, not the dinners, the laughter, the facade we lived under. But Gideon, Lila, and I have built something new, something honest. We meet weekly at a Seattle cafe, just the three of us, sometimes with Evelyn. We talk about our lives, Gideon's consulting firm, Lila's research, my designs, without the weight of secrets. Evelyn's new family meetings are different, too. No more lavish displays or hidden agendas, just transparency, trust, a commitment to truth. She's redefined our legacy, ensuring our futures are secure, our dreams protected. I've started mentoring a young designer, a girl with fire in her eyes, like I had at her age. I tell her what Evelyn told me, "Your truth is your strength." It feels like passing a torch, building a legacy of my own. The old family is gone, fractured by Sylvia and Leonard's lies, but we've created something better. Gideon's laugh is freer now, Lila's voice stronger. We're not just siblings, we're allies, bound by shared scars and shared hope. Evelyn's presence reminds us what family can be, support, not sabotage. I think of the past, the dinners where we played our parts, unaware of the truth. Those are memories now, but they don't own me. We're writing a new story, one where trust is earned, where love is honest. It's not perfect, but it's ours, and it's enough to keep me moving forward, one honest moment at a time. Sylvia sent me a letter last month, handwritten, her words shaky but sincere. She apologized, admitting the weight of their lies, but there was still a hint of deflection, a shadow of the old excuses. "We're trying, Nora," she wrote. I read it, folded it away, and let it sit. They're trying, and maybe one day I'll be ready to meet them halfway, but not yet. The scars are still healing, but I'm not the person I was that night, broken by their betrayal. I'm stronger, wiser, free. My business is growing, my siblings are thriving, and Evelyn's lessons guide us. This journey, through pain, loss, and rebuilding, has taught me that betrayal doesn't define you, it's what you do next that matters. I've chosen to rise, to create, to trust again, carefully. What about you? Have you faced a family betrayal, a secret that changed everything? Maybe it was a lie uncovered, a trust broken, or a moment that forced you to rebuild. Share your story in the comments. I want to hear how you moved forward, how you found strength. This isn't just my story, it's ours, a reminder that we can survive the deepest wounds and come out stronger. If this resonated with you, hit that like button, subscribe, and ring the bell for more stories of resilience. Let's keep this conversation going, building a community where truth and healing matter. Your voice matters, just like mine did when I started over. Tell me, how did you reclaim your story?